Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soul Over Matter podcast, a podcast for souls along this awakening wild human journey. Today, I have my guest, Tanya Markul, who is an author and writer and someone who I have really resonated with over the last year and a half. So, Tanya, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, Michelle. Good. Thank you so much for having me here. It seems really comfortable and yeah, Colorado meets Copenhagen.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
Across the world, we're bringing ooh, I just got chills. We're bringing, our light and our phoenix energy across the world as women who have been through it, right? And who write about it. So, Tanya, thank you. It's my pleasure to have you here. I found your work on Instagram probably around almost a year and a half ago. And your words just were medicine to my soul. So I really would love to know where your story began. How did you come to be an author? How did you come to be a writer?
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me here. Um, I really appreciate the invitation to have a conversation. It's awesome. Um, that is a good question. I've been writing or like knowing that I wanted to write since I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. And I wrote my first book, um, when I was like 6. And it was a story about a little baby. It was called Little Baby Boohoo.
Oh,
And it was a story about, a little baby that cried all the time. And that baby was me. I
mm,
mean, I didn't know that it was, but it was definitely the story of me. And then I think I wrote my second book when I was around 8 years old. And it was a story about a woman, a princess, of course, who was to go into the forest with her sisters, and they were going to find, their Prince Charming, and then come home and like live happily ever after. And they would do that with me. And like that story was about my mom, and
mm,
she never found her prince, and she didn't come home. So I read like writing for me, and then like moving into my teenage years, like writing for me became really like a tool of survival. It was my complete, place of relief. And it was a place where I could be myself, and I feel like I've had a lot of challenge. I had a challenging childhood, and I grew up with my grandparents. And then when my grandparents died, I was raised by an aunt. And there wasn't a lot of nurturing in our house. And there wasn't a lot of, um, like, I could honestly say for 4 years, I didn't hug anybody in my family. Like, that's a long
mm.
time to not
Ooh,
embrace the people you
mhm,
live with. And it's weird. It's weird. Um, but anyways, my journal became like my friend. It became like my family. And I often felt like because I had, kind of grown up feeling like I was rejected and like I didn't really fit in anywhere, I would like change who I was to try and appease whoever was around me, So I had all these identities, and like I would change myself because I thought I had to be someone else in order to be like wanted and like accepted. And my journal became a place where I didn't have to do that. I could write freely and be myself. And like I think I always knew that I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't have the confidence to
mm,
really step into that space or to, let myself tell my own story. So I feel like I came to writing. I've always loved it since I was a little kid, but I really came into it, I would say, the last like 15 years.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, those journaling, writing, it's this sacred space, right? And this private, it's almost like another world that we live in, right? And it can be like our journals can be our therapists, right? Because it's just this clear, um, non-judgmental space where we can show up as who we are. When did
Yes.
you begin sharing your writing with others? Like, how long did it take you to have that confidence? Was it in high school? Was it in college? Like, when did you really start saying, okay, I'm gonna share my medicine with the world. I'm gonna share my experiences.
Yeah, I mean, that took a long time, honestly. It really took a long time. I wrote for like my college newspaper. I felt very like I've written for publications, felt very comfortable writing about other things,
Hmm.
other than that as well.
Naturally.
So, like, have tried to avoid that as much as possible. And I mean, I would say probably in the past like 8 to 10 years, I've started to share more openly, like with more raw emotion and talk about, my childhood with, the intention of empowering other people, like other
Mhm.
women to tell their stories and to not feel so alone in the world. And I think for me, like, and this is something I'm really working on right now, because I want to write a novel. I want to write a sort of memoir-esque um, piece, and I'm doing that right now, and I'm finding it incredibly. I feel like it's the hardest thing I've ever done because I'm having to go back into my childhood and reflect and tell the story. And of course, as a writer, you want to capture as many details as possible. You don't want to tell the story, you want to show the story. And I'm
Mm.
finding it's really challenging right now.
Mm.
So that's interesting. It's an interesting place.
Yeah, it's kind of reliving it, right? And reliving it from I know there's so many posts that have resonated, so many of your writings. I found you when I was going through a huge transition in my life, complete tower moment, just up and leaving an entire other life. And I do remember one, it's like we get to rescue ourselves now.
Yeah.
Right, we get to rescue those little girls, those little boys who didn't have anyone emotionally there, supportive, and no fault of any adult, right? Because everyone's learning, we're all learning, but I remember this one post you shared of like, you get to save yourself now, you get to save that little girl, and yeah, it is wild to reflect because as you're going back there, right? It's like this new unearthing, this new layer of healing, and it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Oh my God, the discomfort. I mean, the discomfort. The discomfort in just writing alone is unbelievable. It is definitely a companion. And reflecting the discomfort is wild. Like I feel like I have told my story many times. I feel like I'm pretty open about it, but writing it is literally a whole entirely different process. It really is. And I can really feel where I still feel like that little girl, like
Mm,
stuck in a woman's body, the parts that I haven't let go of yet, and the parts of me that are like dying to evolve, you know, and all of that happening kind of at once. It's kind of like, the letting go and there's a becoming as well. And there's like everything in between. Um, yeah, writing is it's a powerful tool. That's for sure.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's I almost see it sometimes as like when we write about our lives and memoirs or just reflections, it's like we're almost going back and retrieving fragments of our soul, retrieving fragments of our past, and it definitely is a form of healing. And as we know, healing is not rainbows and butterflies.
Maybe sometimes.
Sometimes, right? The meditations,
Yeah,
the mystical parts, but you
dream.
talk a lot about the phoenix and you talk a lot about dying, and I really resonate with that. Can you share more about that phoenix energy that you kind of it's like the essence of your writing almost.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I wouldn't say that I like have this really conscious connection with the phoenix. It's more, it just is like, I feel like a natural part of my writing, like my writing themes. Like you said, it's just, and I feel like that has been um, symbolic of my life without asking for it to happen. Just happening. Um, but the phoenix for me is like, how many times can you burn? You know, how many
Mm.
times can you let go of a version of yourself that really, no, it doesn't need to be here anymore? And like, how willing am I? Ask myself all the time. And I feel like I'm afraid of everything. Like, I'm so afraid of writing. I'm so afraid of, looking inward. I'm so afraid of letting go of the maiden and being the woman, that I am. It's all scary as shit, right?
Yeah, and no one would believe that from your right. People would look at your Instagram page and be like, this woman's brave and courageous
Yes.
and so self-assured. And that's thank you for sharing that, because it's, people just think we, in general, anyone, right? It's like we just arrive somewhere and we're this, goddess and everything's
Yes.
beautiful. And no, it's we're scared shitless and we do it anyway, right?
Yes. I mean, I have to say, I just want to say I love the symbolism of the phoenix. What I was trying to say is like I just don't have a phoenix like tattooed on my body. It's
Oh,
not
that's okay.
like I don't know. I don't know why I felt like saying that. But I do oh, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
I lost my train of thought. But it
Being
really,
scared.
yes, being scared and like, oh yes, I get a lot of amazing uh DMs and a lot of amazing emails from amazing humans in the world. And a lot of them start with, you're so courageous, you're so brave.
Mm.
And I'm like, are you talking to me? Like me? It's like, wow, because I definitely don't feel that way on a daily basis. But that is also, the power of writing. You can also write what you feel, you're becoming and where you feel that you've been. And it can feel more bold when it's in writing than it does on the inside. That's for sure.
Mm. Yeah, it's almost like not a persona, right? But kind of, right? It's like our writing takes on an entity of its own, right? This journey of who we are, this experience, this human experience, and that's what writing does, right? You want to just be able to speak from your heart, speak from your soul,
Yeah.
and it is brave, right? It
It
is
is.
brave.
It is.
You are brave. You might not feel that way. I know I don't feel that way all the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I get the same of like, Michelle, I can't believe you shared these things. And it's like, well, I got to get it out of me. I can't keep it in my body, right? Because I'm also an energy healer. And it's like writing releases that energy from they actually have, there's like research, like pen to paper
Yes.
actually does something to our brain and does something to our body. So it
Oh
is
my God.
brave.
It is brave. It 100%, million percent is so brave. And like, I always say when, I'm asked, why do you write? And I seriously, my answer has always been, and I've always felt this way, that writing gives my pain, it gives my challenges, it gives my frustration, it gives all of that constriction a place to live, like other than my body. So it could go and live on and breathe and do whatever it wants on these pages, but it doesn't have to stay like in my tight shoulders or, in my belly or in my heart, whatever.
In your head, yeah, in your
Yes,
womb,
in
right?
my
In our
in my head.
hips. Like, oh my God, our hips are like the junk drawer of our bodies.
Oh
It's
my God.
it is, it's a form of release. How do you feel when you receive these messages from people all over the world who you've helped change their lives with your writing?
I mean, it's absolutely incredible to receive that. It's incredible.
Hello? Tanya, can you hear me? Hello? Tanya?
Being vulnerable
Oh no,
to take that.
I lost you.
Oh no.
I know, I'll have to edit it, but
Okay.
you were up to it feels incredible.
Yes, it feels absolutely incredible to to get that kind of feedback. And I feel like it's also it's really been hard for me to receive. To
Mm,
receive that feeling like worthy enough to receive those words and that, you know, gratitude. But that's also something that I'm working on right now, saying,
yeah.
yes, yes, I can take this in. I'm allowed, you
Yeah.
know?
The permission to receive, right? I feel like that's such a deeply rooted wound in men and women. Um, and it's when we're not taught to receive or we don't receive as children,
Yeah,
right? It's this like, who me? Like I I get to receive. And I think you speak to so many who are listening about that. Receiving is a universal, it's like we get to receive because we exist,
yeah.
right? We are worthy because we exist.
Mm,
And it's such a beautiful journey for you because it's like you're just putting your heart out into the world, you're sharing your medicine, and you're not expect I'm sure you did not expect any DMs or any messages. You're just like, I'm just sharing from my soul. And
mm,
it's also healing to, it's like that energy exchange with others who are, I'm one of them, right? Who are resonating with your work, who are resonating with your journey.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thanks. I mean, I think being also on like, the receiving end, it does require you to be also vulnerable and like receiving those emails. I have definitely come into contact with a lot of walls that I have built around my heart, being afraid to receive that amazing, um, strong, loving energy, right? So it's not easy.
Yeah, I
Do you?
remember when I asked you to be on my podcast, you're like, "What? Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, girl, like come on." It's it's an edge. It's an edge, right? We don't ask to be seen or heard. I think you speak to many women. I never thought a million years ago I'd be a podcast host or sharing my voice or doing anything I'm doing. And it's
Yes.
just like we continue to follow our heart, right? We continue to follow our soul, and what unfolds is exactly what is meant to happen in our lives. And
Oh,
what would you say to little Tanya, who was 6 years old and writing that story about a little baby crying? Like, what would you say to her right now?
oh my God. I mean, I've thought about that many times. I don't know that I have words for it.
Mm.
I definitely have a vision. You know, I think those words will come as I'm writing my current book. Um, but I know how I would want to make her feel, you know. So that's a big question.
How would you want to make her feel?
I would want to make her feel like seen and
Mm.
loved and completely accepted for who she is. And I say this also because I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old son. So,
Oh.
you know, I would just want to make them feel safe and protected and like they weren't a burden on my life, you know, and celebrated for coming into this life and being a child. There's so much preciousness about children.
Mm-hmm.
My God, there's so much preciousness about children. I think if we all spent more time with children, also with our grandmas and grandpas, you know, we get a different take on life. We get a different take on how to use your body, how to use your imagination, you know, how to be in conversation. There's just, yeah, children are so precious. I would tell her how precious she was and that
Mm.
it's going to make it.
Yeah, and it's almost like, when people send you messages and honor your writing, it's almost speaking to that little Tanya, right? It's almost speaking, it's like this inner child healing of, oh, I do get to receive, I do get to be cherished and celebrated and seen for who I am, right? You shared before how writing was like the only place you could feel seen and um not judged for who you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. And feel safe, to feel
Mm.
safe, to have these strong emotions. You know, it's not, we're not always in relationships or friendships or, you know, environments where other people can handle what you bring to the table, you know, and like right now I'm working with the lines of, you know, don't feel like you have to deny your story because it doesn't fit another person's narrative, you know, and that's also been a huge reason for me to not share, you know, to not feel worthy of speaking up. So,
So powerful.
mm,
Yeah, to water ourselves down, right?
yes.
And you speak to me because I move through that as well of being around others who can hold space and not. I'm sure you've done a lot of reflections of your life and it's like, wow, there are a lot of people that I watered myself down for and I created this like chameleon energy,
Yes.
right? Just to mold into the box that would appease others. And it's so subconscious, right? It is. It's like inner child trauma that is a response to our
Mm.
environment. And how would you how would you tell women and men, like, what would you say to those people who don't know how to really stick with their story and stick with their emotions and show their biggest selves in a world that doesn't always know what to do with them?
Yeah. I think the biggest, I think the biggest thing for me is self-awareness, you know, really building an awareness of yourself and just doing that, you naturally come into a different relationship, you know, with who you are. And you naturally, I feel a bit more naturally become, you know, your intuitive nature to make decisions wakes up. And I think you can start to realize that through self awareness, you can start to make choices that give you the best possible chance, you know?
Mm.
And writing is definitely a tool that has been a tool and is a tool for me to build self awareness. I always say to everyone, people say, oh, what do I write about? Or, you know, how do I find my voice? Or what is my inspiration? What are my core themes? And I always say, start by telling your story to the most important person in your life. And
Mm,
that's you. Start with your story, come back to your story, and you will find your way. I mean, there's so much medicine. There is so much to be discovered in writing your story. There's so much. And there's a lot of inspiration there, and there's a ton of gold.
so much gold, right?
So much.
It's turning our pain into medicine, into purpose, into power, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
taking our power back from these powerless moments we've had in our lives and leaning into it, right? And I love that. The most important person you will tell your story to is yourself, because a lot of it we forget about, right? It's like, so I'm sure you feel that way too. I'm a writer, and it's like you're writing and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I forgot that even happened.
Yes. Definitely. And I think writing too, you realize you are not that little girl anymore,
Mm,
not that little child anymore. And that there's no one going back for that inner child. There's no one going back for your inner child except for you. You have to be the one to make that better.
yeah. No one, I say that all the time to clients or to myself, right? No one's coming to save us.
Yeah.
No
It's
one,
rough.
the Prince Charming you wrote about as a child, right? Like we're so ingrained in this Western energy of like, there's this man that's just gonna come save you and make all your dreams come true, and you're gonna live happily ever after. And it's like, no, actually, it's our inner masculine. It's our inner person, right? Our inner soul, our inner king that's like, hey, we can do this. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you do that too. Like I'll talk to myself and be like, Michelle, we can do this. We're safe. We're safe now. We're able to do this. And yeah, it's so powerful and it's ever unfolding.
Ever unfolding. And being in relationship with yourself, I have found like building a relationship with myself, becoming a friend to myself
Mm.
is a game changer. Still working on it, you
Me
know,
too, girlfriend.
in progress. I mean, self-acceptance, I pray that everybody, including myself, will find a way to like love and accept themselves in this lifetime because that's everything.
It affects everything in our lives, right? It when we fill our own cup, when we really nourish ourselves, it fulfills so much, and it, especially as women, it pours into other relationships and other your children. It pours into so much. So yeah, so magical. Self-love, self-acceptance. So many people abandon themselves in this world, in this life, because of trauma, because of abuse, because of all the things. So yeah, oh, so amazing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your medicine with my listeners. Where can people find you? Where can people find your work?
Yes, I'm on the socials. I'm on Instagram at Tanya Markul and Facebook, Tanya Markul / author. I think I know.
And your book?
Yes, and
Your
my book is
books?
the She Book. Yes, the She Book and the She Book Volume 2. And I also have a 30-day self-publishing course, and you can find out more about that at publishyourpoetry30.com.
Ooh, that's
Mhm.
exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I have an amazing community over there. I think so far I've been doing this for the past year and have seen like 30 authors self-publish their book who have taken the course. So that is just, it's outstanding. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh, that's beyond amazing. I had no idea. I'm excited. I'm gonna go check that out. That's That's the ripple. That's the ripple effect, right?
That's the rip.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you for
sharing your
reaching out.
story. Hmm?
Yes. Yes. Sorry I interrupted you there. I just want to
No.
say thank you so much for reaching out and connecting and holding this amazing space for me. And yeah, Colorado, Copenhagen.
The ripple's huge. It's that's it. That's it, right? Um, there's a quote somewhere, and that's how I'll leave our chat. It's when we share our stories, it becomes someone else's survival guide. Yeah.
So
Thank you so much, Tanya.
thank you. See you soon.